Sorry to hold things up, but we technically can't start until 7:10, so we'll be just a couple minutes. Meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order for October 3rd, 2022. We're meeting both in person as well as remotely via WebEx. So welcome to those in attendance as well as those participating remotely. We will start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Phil, would you mind leading us tonight? Thank you very much, Phil. We'll move on to communications from the public. We do have 3 public hearings advertised for public hearings this evening, so if you're here to speak on one of those items, please wait until I call that individual hearing. Otherwise, if you have anything to share with the council, now would be your opportunity. Name and address for the record, please, when you approach the podium. Toby.
Toby Scott, 1478 Barclay Lane, Whitefish. A couple things just came to my attention that they're not on the agenda and just something to address. I did give the city clerk a copy of my notes here just so that you'll have them in writing. And one thing is I've been visiting Bozeman lately, and I noticed that they have painted all of their traffic utility boxes very nicely. They look really cool. And we have 4, 5, 6 stoplights around here, maybe 7. And I would suggest either hiring, commissioning, or open for design proposals the painting of these traffic utility boxes. There's one right outside the building here. It's about 4 feet high, 3 feet by 4 feet or something like that. And they've done a nice job in Bozeman. Second, which is something that I brought up several years ago, was to create legislation covering rental scooters, electric scooters. I had the opportunity to rent them and do this down in Los Angeles, and then saw them starting to bloom all over the United States. And again, I was down in Bozeman, and they've got hundreds of them all over. And the problem with them is that people ride them, and then they just drop them. And so my suggestion is to create legislation covering the rental scooters And as I've said in my note here, the problem lies in the abandonment of the scooters after use. And there is technology to prevent this and create a fine should someone violate these rules. So I'm suggesting that you be proactive, lest all of a sudden one morning we find 50 scooters laying on the street corners around Monday, because they do. They just come in, and Bird Bikes or Lime and half a dozen of them, they just come in and they drop them off, and that's it. And unless you have legislation against it. And then the last thing is to rent or set up a light or traffic signal or officers at the corner of 13th and Baker. I don't know if you guys have happened to run into it, but I found that on several occasions, heading south, the traffic is backed up to the post office, stopping at the stop sign at 13th Street. And it's just a stop sign. A friend of mine tried to direct traffic there, and he pulled his car off to the side, went out and started directing traffic and moving traffic along. And two of our on-duty officers stopped him and accosted him for 10 or 15 minutes, going, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm trying to help out." And they didn't give him a ticket, but I think their time could have been better spent directing traffic rather than harassing him for trying to help and direct traffic. And I think if the city just rented a traffic light down there, or a couple of them, you could alleviate the problem, because everybody pulls up, stops at the light, and like that, or stops at the sign and goes. Whereas, I'm sure the traffic signals are available for rent. And as I put in my note, it's mainly because of the construction that's on Spokane Avenue, just north of there. I think that people are routing over to Baker, but it's horrendous. It's gotten so bad that if I see the traffic is backed up, I take a right turn on 6th Street and go over to like Lupfer or O'Brien and all the way up, and then come down through the police station and just circumvent.
Don't tell our secrets. Don't tell our secrets.
Oh, ignore that. And that's it. Just a couple of things that I've observed around town. So take them and do what you will.
Thanks, Toby.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Further public comments tonight?
Thank Mr. Mayor, council members. My name's Don Rohde. I live at 106 Bay Point Drive. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be heard regarding the transportation plan that you're going to talk about.
We are under a public hearing, so if you don't mind waiting to share your comments when I call that public hearing, it'll just be in a few minutes here.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks, Don. Further comments from the public? Any volunteer board reports? How about the council? Not seeing any, we'll move quickly on to our consent agenda. You have the minutes from the September 19th regular as well as special sessions. Can I have a motion, please?
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Seconded by Councilor Caltabiano. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And that motion does carry unanimously, which brings us to our first public hearing of the evening. And that will be item 6A, Resolution 22-30, a resolution of intent to adopt the 2022 Whitefish Transportation Plan as an amendment to the 2007 Whitefish City County Growth Policy and adopting findings with respect to such amendment. And this was postponed from our September 6th and September 19th public hearing, and the hearing does remain open this evening. Craig or Dave?
I'm going to take this one
Okay.
to start. Dave was gracious enough to give us a staff report at the last meeting describing how this is, the transportation plan is an amendment to the growth policy, so bear that in mind as we are looking forward to adopting this. I did provide a memo in the packet just describing some of the changes since the August 25th, 2022 transportation plan which was in your packet for the last meeting. So I'm just going to go through this memo briefly, and then that will wrap up staff's comments on this. So since the draft that was presented to you guys at the last meeting, the changes are as follows. First and foremost, the vision statement was updated in the current draft so that both the vision statement in the body of the report and the executive summary match. There was a missing clause about supporting economic vitality, which was updated at one of the last study review meetings, and it was changed in the body of the report, but not in the executive summary. So that's now been added to the executive summary. We've made some minor changes to the goals and strategies. Those exist on page 5 of the executive summary, page 9 of the body of the report, page 10 of the body of the report, page 6 of the executive summary, and page 14 of the body of the report. Those are detailed in your memo, and those were brought forward as recommendations from Citizens for a Better Flathead. We agreed that they added necessary weight to those goals. They don't change the goal in any dramatic or substantial way, but we felt that language was important, so those changes have been made. Another change that was recommended by citizens was adding a new strategy under Goal 7 that consolidates all of the references to traffic impact studies, so that has been done. MSN 11, or Major Street Network Project number 11, which was 7th Street between Kalispell and Spokane Avenue, has been included now as a priority project. So that is described in a couple different places in the report where we talk about priority projects. I will note a comment that just came up in the last couple of days is that we missed an asterisk in 2 different tables indicating that that's a priority project. So although it has been described as a priority project, we do want to add that asterisk in 2 different locations in the report. The same commenter also noted that we spelled promenade wrong, so that may clue you in to who made that comment. So in the final draft of the report, which I'm proposing go on the consent agenda on the next meeting, should council decide to approve it, we will fix the spelling of promenade and add 2 asterisks. We've separated the costs in the project between MDT and City of Whitefish projects. So in the table that describes the financial summary of the plan, the new or current unfunded city need is just over $36 million, so that's come down significantly. And the MDT needs that require funding are $91 million, so that is included in the plan. We heard a number of comments at the last meeting about the reference to 8-foot paths. And so on page 134, we did remove that sentence. So the sentence that's previously stated, paths 8 feet in width may be allowed for low traffic situations or along riparian buffer zones, has been deleted in the current draft. And then we've also made some corrections to references to the downtown highway study in a number of different on a number of different pages. In the previous draft, it was indicated that MDT selected the no-build alternative in the final study, which was incorrect. MDT's preferred alternative is actually concept C, and so that's been addressed in the plan. So that summarizes the changes that have been made since the previous meeting 2 weeks ago. It remains staff's recommendation that council adopt this plan.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the staff report summarizing the changes since our last meeting. Are there any questions for Craig on his report? Ben.
I just have one, Craig, about the change that was made for traffic impact statements to include emergency situations like fire and medical. How is that going to work? Like, do we provide guidance on how that analysis is done? I mean, how does that how's that gonna happen in practice?
Our engineering standards do currently include directions on how to complete a traffic impact study. The norm on traffic control also has detailed instructions on how to complete a traffic impact analysis. And so all we did with this change was simply take those strategies that were kind of sprinkled around in different goals and add them to one location under goal number 7.
Further questions for Craig? Giuseppe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Craig, I'm looking at the modified table of costs and revenue. I'm looking at page 112 of our packet, PDF. The numbers you just gave, you said 39 city unfunded funds, probably is 36. Am I correct to read that the estimated total revenue between now and 2040 is 56 and a bit million dollars? The cost description for the city need is $93 million. So the difference between 93 and 56, which is 36, would be the unfunded city needs. Is that correct? Is that what you're referring to?
That's correct.
And then, thank you. And then the unfunded needs, MDT, are $88 million for SN needs, and TSM needs are $3.5 million for a total of $91 million.
Correct.
So am I understanding that if the city got between now and 2040, all the funds, Fed, state, the city should get $91 million, so we don't have to worry about that part?
I guess I'm not following your question.
Okay, the non-city needs and revenue are the two lines MSN needs, MDT, and TSM needs, MDT, right?
Correct. Those are the non-city funded projects.
Okay, and that number is $91 million between now and 2040.
Correct.
Now, why do you say they're unfunded?
Well, we don't have MDT revenue data, and so that's essentially the total amount of project costs that we're anticipating for MDT, or that are being recommended in this plan for MDT.
Okay, and in that cost, are there things like the bridge over the Whitefish River where the 3 culverts are right now, or that is not in this cost?
On Spokane Avenue?
Yes.
That would be included in this cost.
It's included in that cost?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for Craig? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing, and the public hearing remains open from our last meeting. Is there any public comments tonight? I know many signed up. Certainly don't hesitate. Just please approach the podium and name and address for the record, please.
Don Rohde, live at 106 Bay Point Drive. Perhaps Craig clarified a few things for me since the last meeting when this was brought up. So thank you for allowing me to be heard. First and importantly, I would like each of you to know that I pray for you. You've been given the privilege and honor to act on behalf of the citizens of Whitefish and be responsible stewards of the assets belonging to our community as well as the operation thereof. So I pray specifically for your wisdom and thoughtfulness as you carry out the duties for which you've been elected. This transportation plan that we're discussing is something that's been deliberated for some time now. The state and county commissioned a $250,000 traffic study that resulted in 6 different options. And the community had the opportunity to see these options last year at O'Shaughnessy Center. It's critical to note the state has agreed, as I understand it, to bear the cost associated with any one of these options designed to improve the traffic flow, including the construction of the bridge over Whitefish River at Spokane, eliminating the culverts there, and including construction of pedestrian walking and bike paths underneath that bridge designed to ultimately connect Whitefish with Columbia Falls. I believe that's accurate. So while the state recommended the third option, concept C, I saw in the proposed plan and I heard at the latest city council meeting that the city had opted for a seventh concept, concept G, and both the director of public works, Craig, and the mayor have stated that this concept puts the city and the state at an impasse. Further, my understanding that the cost of that concept was approximately $160 million now, as I understand it, perhaps reduced, but not considerably. And it's my understanding that if you choose not to, because you choose not to involve the state and the county with one of their options, the city is going to receive minimal funding going forward for the Spokane Avenues works. Also my understanding that a portion of our local resort tax revenue is earmarked for street maintenance and repair, and that this independent concept would be paid for by these revenues. But there isn't enough revenue there to cover this expense. So where is the balance going to come from, and what happens to the funds otherwise budgeted for street repair and maintenance elsewhere in the community? This doesn't sound like good stewardship or sound leadership to me. We all pay property and income taxes that go into the state and county coffers, a portion of which is dedicated to projects such as this. So please tell me, how do you guys reconcile the act of turning away the funds brought by the state and county, funds already contributed to the state and county by Whitefish citizens? In essence, we've all already contributed for this project. And if I'm not mistaken, you're telling the state to give our beneficiary interest to some other community. I don't know, logic and common sense tell me that the majority of our citizens here wouldn't be very happy with that decision. Pursuing this independent concept that you have, together with the obvious inability to responsibly pay for it, is a demonstration, in my opinion, of poor stewardship and a serious lack of wisdom and good judgment. In fact, I would say that if you are indeed committed to the welfare of our community and the citizens, you can surely find an acceptable option among the six the state provided and preserve the resort tax revenue for the much needed repair and maintenance of our other municipal streets and sidewalks. Thank you for hearing me. Rest assured I'll continue to pray for you guys and your families, and that you'll act with wisdom on this issue in dispatching all the other important roles for which you were elected, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Bing. I live at 358 Bonita Circle, which is off of Whitefish Ave. I only found out about this meeting about 6 o'clock this evening, so I'm kind of unprepared. But because of another project that's happening behind Dayland Clinic, my homeowners association has become very much involved in the extension of Whitefish Avenue from where it terminates currently at the Les Schwab property and going through to Shiloh Avenue. Bonita Circle is directly off of that at Acres Lane. I'm the president of the homeowners. Currently, we have a lot of small children that live within our subdivision, as well as the new townhomes that were just constructed on Whitefish Ave. They've all become friends, so they go back and forth across Whitefish Avenue continuously. And so we're very worried that if Whitefish Avenue were to go through to all the way to JP Road, that everybody that is coming down JP Road and also from all of those townhomes back there will use that as their conduit to Super One and that mall. And it could become very dangerous. In addition to that, we understand that the Architectural Review Committee is having a proposal put to it for some multifamily homes right on Whitefish Ave at Eagle Lakes. And that those 6 driveways for those multifamily homes will be exiting directly onto Whitefish Ave. And that trying to back out of your driveway onto a busy thoroughfare is rather dangerous. So with all of those, and that's what we have, is we're very concerned about the extension of Whitefish Ave. We also have spoken with the real estate department of Les Schwab, and they are currently against the extension across their property. Now, I know that there's an easement in place and that it's been there on the plan for quite a while, but we think it should be relooked at considering the amount of traffic that will go on that road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Nancy Schuber, 110 Bay Point Drive. This transportation plan is supposed to be looking ahead 20 years. We need 3 lanes on Spokane and 3 lanes on Baker. Look at the mess that this construction brought. We need it all the way. We don't need the 3 lanes to stop at 7th and go to 1 lane each way, which is Plan G. I've looked at the plans. We need the new bridge over the river, and we need the hike and bike pedestrian underneath. Be fiscally responsible. Use the state and federal funds that are available to us. And please revisit Plan C. Thank you.
Mark Schaefer, 807 Greenwood Drive. I'm here to speak against a portion of the transportation plan. In 1983, I purchased my property on Greenwood Drive. I am the oldest resident there, not the oldest resident there, but I've lived there longer than anyone. I've been there over almost 40 years. I purchased lot 13, which is the last lot on the right. When my wife and I looked at the property, I wanted to get lot 12, which is right on the river. The realtor said that lot was going to be very cheap and I could have it very cheap because I couldn't build a home on it. The area was completely backfilled with dirt and it was a steep grade down to the river. Now the city comes in and they're going to say that they want to come in now and build a bridge across that lot. I would like to see the environmental impact statement. If I couldn't build a foundation for a home there in 1982, how are they going to build a bridge there today? In 2001, that was the last plan for a bridge across in the 2001 plan. And Robert Pesch and Associates said Greenwood Avenue didn't support enough traffic to pay for the cost of the bridge. And the cost of that bridge in 2001 was estimated $5.4 million in 2001. Also, it's recommended that in town they have a 60-foot wide area. Right now it's 30 feet, and we measured it, it's actually 37 feet. So if they have to have their 60-foot easement, my poor neighbor Lauren is going to have to sell his Subaru and buy a car that's less than 2 feet long because his driveway from his garage will be 2 feet. Also, in about 2005, the area behind us was a beautiful horse ranch. A developer came in and bought the property. He came to me in early 2005 and offered me more than I paid for the house and the lot in 1982. Excuse me. For a 30-foot easement for Riverview Estates. He wanted to have his entrance and exit there. I talked to my neighbors, and every single one of them said, no. We bought this property because we wanted to be in the city, we wanted to be close to town, and we wanted to have access to the river. The plan to go across there in Greenwood, and disturbs me, especially about the bridge. I have a very good friend who I went to college with, retired here from Oregon, built a home on the river in Riverview Estates. He's already put over $400,000 into trying to shore up his foundation from slipping into the river. They thought they had it fixed, and it wasn't a complete fix. They stuck 40-foot long iron, about 40 of them, underneath his house all the way out in the roadway. Now Now his brother-in-law who owns a house is starting to have the same problem. I don't see how it could pass an environmental impact statement. I called the Fish and Game, State Fish and Game, and asked if they had done an EIS, and they said no, they had not, or they didn't have any record of one. I'm very concerned that building that bridge there, besides the terrible cost, and right now, our area, on a day like today, we probably had 30 to 40 pedestrians walking, most of them walking their dogs, and they come down our street. We do not have sidewalks. Our lots are not big enough to have a sidewalk. And being a dead-end street, we have an elderly couple in their walkers that actually come out and use that street. They feel safe enough. So while I'm not opposed to the transportation plan, I am vehemently opposed to the expansion of Greenwood. And all of my other neighbors have said the same thing to me. They didn't know anything about it. We've never been notified by anyone that the city of Whitefish was going to take this neighborhood that I've lived in for 40 years and totally change it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Good evening. My name's Sandra Alessi. I live at 812 Greenwood Drive, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm also here to talk about the bridge across Greenwood Drive. I'm one of the neighbors, and if you can see, there are a number of us that are here tonight. One of the aspects of this transportation plan includes a roundabout at Greenwood and Highway 93. That roundabout is going to be located 1 block from the Walgreens at 13th and 1/2 of a block from the light at the mall on Commerce. Have you any idea what kind of mess that's going to make with traffic if you have these big trucks coming in? They have a red light at Commerce, they have a red light at JP, a red light at Acres, a red light at Commerce, because this is all part of the plan, and then a roundabout at Greenwood. That's going to be a mess. And whether the big trucks will be able to make it around there, I don't know. Greenwood Drive was, the road was donated, the easement for the road was given to the city in 1977. That easement is for a 30-foot private road. I have the copy of the document. When John Kramer donated Lot 12 to the city, that warranty deed actually talks about a 30-foot private road, an easement for a 30-foot private road. Now, right now, the road is somewhere between 36 and 7 feet. I personally did not measure, but I know my neighbor, Lauren Eckhart. Please raise your hand, Lauren. What did you measure? The city of Whitefish has clearly already encroached upon our lawns and on our property by 6 feet if the road's 36 feet and there's only a 30-foot easement. That's an issue. And now the building standards require that Greenwood be expanded another 30 feet for a total of 60 feet. This is a fully developed area. There's no space for this. Y'all should drive down Greenwood and see what a narrow little place. If you have 2 cars parked on each side, sometimes it's a little difficult to get a car down the middle. And there's just no space. There's more area that's undeveloped down the way toward Lena Joy, and it's not developed. And this is contemplating growth for 20 years. Why not go in an undeveloped area and promote growth in that undeveloped area? There's another issue with the sloughing of the land that Mark addressed. Let me check my notes to see. Do you need copies of those deeds and easements that I have? If you do, I'm happy to give them to you. I realize that the city owns Lot 12 at the end of Greenwood, but that deed and that is only good for a 30-foot private road. A bridge, that's not going to accommodate a bridge. That's not you can't put enough people on it to make that work. Not without completely having having a street in our living room. I would please ask that you reconsider the bridge at Greenwood and the roundabout at Greenwood, because I think that's going to create the biggest mess you ever want to see. And did I understand that you wanted a copy of those documents that I have?
If you have copies you'd like to leave with our city clerk, you can go ahead and do so.
I can do that.
Thanks very much.
So please reconsider this Greenwood Terrace Bridge. It's going to create way more problems than it's going to solve. Besides that, that bridge has to be super high because you're going to have to go over 2 buildings for the sewer treatment plant. That's going to be a big mess. This is not, there are enough areas around this city where you can put that bridge without taking our houses and taking our houses and our yards. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. I can take those for you. Or you can just hand them directly to Michelle, if you don't mind. Thanks. Who's next? Sir, yeah. Help yourselves. Just. Okay, thank you. Okay.
I wanted to say that Greenwood Drive is not the wealthiest place in Whitefish. We need some environmental justice here. Don't take our old neighborhood because it's not as expensive as some of the newer ones. And thank you.
Sir.
Good evening. My name is Michael Mazzaros, 706 Greenwood Drive. If you turn down Greenwood, I'm the second house on the left. I have a small lawn. I bought the house because the lawn was just big enough that I could do it as I was getting older, and small enough that I could kind of make everything work. An additional 30 feet means that I lose my willow tree, and the garage entrance in my driveway will be cut in half. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. Mark had mentioned about the fill in this area. Semis roll down Greenwood Drive, particularly late at night, to access Super 1. The ground shakes. If you put a bridge down where you think you're going to put a bridge and the traffic increases, you're going to be cracking a bunch of foundations, at least 12 all the way down. The third point is most of the people who live there are like me. We're retired, although there are about 5 families with small children, one of which will be right where you're planning to put the access to the bridge. I don't see that this is going to do anything for our neighborhood, and I don't think it's going to do much for Whitefish. If you can reconsider, I would deeply appreciate it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Michael.
Good evening. I'm sorry, I'm kind of like not very used to speaking in a lot of people.
Take your time.
Okay.
It's all
So
fine.
anyways, my name is Jean too. I live in 803 Greenwood Drive, and we bought the place about 3 years, almost 4 years now. I have two businesses in Whitefish, and right now I live out of town before, and but I have kids that go to school in Whitefish High School. And right now, we bought that house. It's because it's easier for my kids, and it's easier for us to go back and forth to our businesses. You know, it's easy access. I just heard from our neighbors that there's a plan to do it through develop the road. Earlier, I went and kind of measured. My house is like 18 feet from the road. And there's a fire hydrant in front of my house. So if you have 30 feet, I don't know where you're going to get it. Because my house stands from the road to my living room. It's like probably 30 feet. So I hope you reconsider and take a look the plans. That's all I'm asking. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jean. Appreciate it. Further comments from the public? Michelle, anyone online wishing to comment tonight?
I sent her a message earlier. She's not interested in speaking at this time.
Great, thank you. Further comments? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for discussion. Who would like to begin? Steve?
Can I ask Craig a couple questions?
Of course.
Okay. Craig, obviously you heard the testimony about the bridge. How likely is that to be something that would be built in the next 20 years? I guess my thought is, does it have to be in this plan?
Well, I mean, so this plan is intended to be, provide a vision of what we want our traffic or transportation network to look like in the next 20 years. Anybody that tries to get from the Highway 93 corridor over to Monaghan and Vorman can pretty quickly see that it's a tricky route. You have basically two options. You can go 10th Street to Park and wrap around Cow Creek, or you can take the JP Bridge, which winds you up JP to Monaghan. And so what we've tried to do in this plan is incorporate more efficient means to move from east to west across the Whitefish River. In the previous transportation plan, which was adopted in 2009, we showed a couple of different alternatives. One was at 13th Street, crossing directly to Vorman, and the other was this option at Greenwood. In the last decade or so, we've looked pretty seriously at that 13th Street Bridge and determined it is the least feasible place to try and construct a bridge. It's one of the widest reaches of the Whitefish River. There's deed restriction issues on the east side of the river, and there's issues on the west side with property that's owned by, I'm not sure who owns it right now, but when North Valley Hospital relocated, there were property issues there. So we've carried forward the Greenwood to Monaghan Bridge in this plan. The likelihood of it being built in the next 20 years, I think, is slim. We know that it's an expensive project, but nonetheless, in this plan, we do want to show options to move traffic from east to west across the river between 10th Street and JP. And so this is the most feasible way of doing it.
Okay. And then my other question is, part of the plan extends 7th Street past the school to connect with Monaghan as well. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay. Would that be something that would probably be a higher priority than building a bridge there because it doesn't require building a bridge?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to have to cross Cow Creek to do that, so there's going to be, if nothing else, some significant culverts, but I would say that the 7th Street connection from Spokane all the way to Vorman would be a higher priority, yeah.
Okay, and that is, that's something that would help to alleviate this traffic snarl as it is with trying to get from, say, Safeway over to Vorman.
Yeah, correct.
You'd go up to 7th and just take 7th to Vorman and down.
Yeah, I mean, that group, that's MSN projects 11 and 12, and they are listed as priorities. The Greenwood Bridge is not listed as a priority.
Okay, thank you.
Rebecca?
Just the practicalities of what the neighbors were talking about is the width of the road and the unstable soil, and is it even really possible to build a bridge there?
Yeah, I think it's possible to build a bridge. You know, river soils in general are known to be unstable, and so there's engineering solutions that can be put in place to mitigate that. The plat that I have for Greenwood Terrace shows a 50-foot right-of-way with 5-foot easements on either side. So what I'm looking at that was approved in the early 80s is a total of 60 feet. I can't speak to exactly where houses were built or where property lines are, but the plat that we use to generate, you know, this recommendation in the study or in the transportation plan is based on the fact that we believe we have 60 feet essentially of city property to do that.
But a house would not be built on that currently.
It shouldn't be, but again, I can't speak to exactly where homes were built since the early 80s until now.
Okay. That's why I'm asking the question. The neighbors don't think that the plat.
Point of order, if you have a comment, please raise your hand and one of the council members can address you to provide further comment up at the podium, please.
I'd like to hear from the gentleman if he wants to come up about that, just because you guys are very anxious about this and it's your neighborhood and we want to address your concerns.
Thank you. I'm Lauren Eckhart at 810 Greenwood. I'm also a veteran of Vietnam. According to the documents we received when we bought the homes, all of the property lines do not show that the city has 60 feet of right-of-way coming down that street. You only have a 30 feet right-of-way. So you need to recheck your plans, come with the current ones, and find out what's existing there. You're talking two different worlds here. They don't coexist. I'd like to see somebody actually give us in the neighborhood the plot plans he's talking about, and let's pull up the other ones and see which one is correct, if you would please. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
When we bought our property, we all got a copy of what the easements and all were, and it was just a 30-foot easement for the road. And most of us are here, you know, some of us are fairly new owners. And one other thing I wanted to address was that I went to the planning meeting last time, and the city planning never did consider a bridge at Lena Joy. And at Lena Joy, there's not access to 93 this moment, but there could be easily. It's just an empty lot. And Lena Joy, the city owns both sides. And it's not a wide point of the river, and it's not, it's not fully developed. There's only housing on one side of the street. And that would be a much better placement as opposed to disrupting where we are. So I just wanted to add that too.
Thanks, Sandra. Is that all, Rebecca?
So, Craig, would you respond to what they're saying, please? Just because it sounds like they all have deeds that show 30 feet,
Yeah,
and you're saying you're at 60 feet?
I'm looking at the approved plat for Glenwood Terrace, which was, Greenwood Terrace, which was approved on May 4th, 1982. And it shows a 50-foot right-of-way with 5 feet of easement on either side for a total of 60 feet. not sure where the 30-foot document is. My guess is it was a document that perhaps was prior to 1982, but I'm not aware of anything that's been approved by the city since 1982 when that 50 feet was dedicated.
Thanks, Craig. Sir, point of order, the public hearing is closed. If a counselor would like to acknowledge you, that's a different story, but until that happens, we're going to deliberate here as a council. Rebecca.
Well, this is a little awkward because the whole neighborhood thinks that we're wrong. And so I don't know how to resolve this and move this plan forward. But
Rebecca, they did hand us a copy of the road easement that references 30 feet, and I'll just tell you that the date on it is 1977, so it's before the one that Craig is referencing. And there could have been a replatting of that area when the mall went in, or when the subdivision was changed. So that's all we have. We can't really tell what it's for, to be honest. This document isn't very clear, so we'd have to do some more research on our end, but what Craig has seen is probably the most recent document.
Thanks, Dana. Well, either up or down, I'd prefer to have a motion on the table to some effect, considering this is our third hearing date, which is 9/6, 9/19, and then currently. Steve?
Make a motion to approve Resolution 22-16, resolution to adopt the transportation plan.
I think that'll be Resolution 22-30, if I'm not mistaken.
30. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I looked at the wrong ones.
Is there a
Yep,
second to the motion?
22-30.
Seconded by Councilor Norton. Steve, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I also have another question. And Karin, maybe, did Karin leave? Well, Craig and Dave, in this regard, this is not regarding the Glenwood Terrace, did I say that one right? Greenwood Terrace, excuse me,
Greenwood, sorry, that was my fault.
Yeah, screwed me up, Craig. Regarding this back and forth between the city and the state regarding the different options for Highway 93. My understanding is that the impasse arose because the vast majority of the population of Whitefish did not want to see the plan as proposed by the state. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I guess I can't say the vast majority of the population of Whitefish, but I can tell you that the vast majority of the citizens of Whitefish that showed up at the last public meeting for this study clearly were against Concept C. And so there was a letter drafted last November sent by council, signed by the mayor, that was based on a motion of this council, and, well, not this council, but the council, and that was based on the comments that were received at that last public meeting that were overwhelmingly against Concept C.
Okay, and as part of that concept, it would jeopardize all the work we did to the downtown corridor, correct? Like the bulb outs and the streetscape and even
Correct.
awnings? Is that correct? Okay, so this was not something that was just hatched by this council to try to, that we didn't like it, so we didn't want to play with the city?
No, not at all. I think
The
the
state,
the
sorry.
biggest issue with the final outcome of the study was that we simply didn't have enough information. I mean, it was, the drawings that were done in the report weren't detailed enough to show us exactly what was going to happen within those corridors. And so there wasn't enough comfort on behalf of the residents that spoke at those meetings that what was going to happen between 7th Street and 2nd Street was going to give us the character and the pedestrian-friendly nature that we were looking for. And so that's why there wasn't support for it.
Okay. And then since that time, you've gone back and kind of reanalyzed the plan that the citizens came to that meeting approved of or favored, and what the state favored, and you found a lot of commonalities, correct?
Yeah, what we're trying to do in the transportation plan is just call out where those commonalities are between concept C and concept G. We haven't gone through and rehashed, the study or had detailed meetings with the state. We just want to make sure that as we carry forward conversations, let's talk about areas that we do agree, and perhaps we can get some of those projects done within the planning horizon of this report, rather than just say we completely disagree, because that's going to be a total stalemate.
Okay. And that funding for those projects, is that's part of what is included in your funding table?
Correct. Yep. We show Baker Avenue from 13th to 2nd. We show, we actually show all of Spokane Avenue from 13th to 2nd, but those projects are included in the funding table as MDT costs.
Okay, thank you. In terms of my comments about the transportation plan, this is a broad document that is our vision. And although there are things that anybody could find to disagree with, I think that moving forward, we need to move this forward. I am willing to consider a friendly amendment to pull out the bridge at Greenwood Terrace or at Greenwood Drive from this plan, especially since doesn't seem like a feasibility piece at this point, but I'm not, that's what I want to say for now. Sorry.
Further comments from the council? Rebecca?
If we adopt this as written tonight, we can always amend it later if the Greenwood neighborhood does not seem like a viable place, correct?
Yeah, this document could be amended in the future, sure.
Okay, because I know we've talked about bridges all over town at different times, and I can't think of us building any new ones except for the footbridges, and so there's a lot of discussion when we build a bridge. So if we accept this and then find a better place for something where we're not going to be basically possibly destroying an existing neighborhood, we could do that through an amendment, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I understand what you guys are saying, and I honestly don't think a bridge will be built there, but I don't know if I feel comfortable pulling out the plan for that until we know more. So if someone else wants to do that, I don't know. I mean, we could always amend it to put it back in too, huh? Yeah.
This plan could be amended in the future.
Okay. Then I guess I'd like to make a friendly amendment to remove the Greenwood Bridge in this plan, so that we could always look at the other options and maybe bring it back on the table if that.
Before you speak to your motion, let's see if we get a second.
Okay.
Is there a second to the friendly amendment?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney for discussion purposes. Rebecca?
No, I think the neighborhood has a lot of compelling arguments about maybe this not being the right place, and we should actually work with them on what's legally viable, and also look at other options along the river. It's a big change to an existing neighborhood to have a bridge and the traffic that will create. So at this point, I think it's okay to pull it off. And have longer discussions with our Public Works Department.
Thanks, Rebecca. Andy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I guess I'm somewhat comfortable with that motion, but I'm not comfortable with just pulling it out and not addressing, because it's one of my overall riding issues that I have with the transportation plan, and because it's one of the toughest things that we have to crack, is east-west connectivity in town. And we've already lost the 7th Street Bridge, which would have gotten us over the river, which was a huge east-west connector for us. And despite what we've kind of heard tonight, I mean, and I think that's a really good example of the fact is that bridge was approved in the EIS in 1992. And that bridge isn't being built today, 30 years later. Why? Because things did change. Changed for a lot of reasons. My concern with not at least addressing another east-west crossing on the river in some fashion in the plan is that it's never going to get any easier, folks, and everybody's going to have an objection to it regardless of where that goes. I understand the Greenwood objections, and a lot of them I can probably agree with. But at the same time, we still, for future people that are going to live in this community, and we're going to see development out to the east. We know that. It's flat, easy ground to develop. It's close to the sewer plant. It's going to happen out there. And to stick our head in the sand today and say that it's not going to, I think is doing the future generations of this community a disservice. And while I understand the current residents' hesitation with it and their vehement opposition to it, if I lived there, I'd be the same way. So I guess what I would like to see, and understand what we're doing tonight is a resolution of an intent to adopt. We're not adopting the plan tonight. So before that plan comes back to us for final adoption, we still do have some time to tinker. But what I would like to do is maybe see a little, and Craig, I hate to throw this out there on your plate, but maybe we do have that discussion that I'm kind of laying out here tonight, that we understand the importance of an east-west connector and another river connection somewhere between 13th and JP Road. Greenwood Drive is one of those that has been under consideration, was going to be forwarded in the plan. We're hesitant to do so given current neighborhood opposition and issues with right-of-way or whatever. But that said, we got to have one. I mean, I think you guys can all understand that. No, Rhonda, please, no. Everybody knows we're going to have another crossing over the river. It's going to happen at some point. And for us to make a 20-year plan and not have at least some kind of language to address that, I think is wrong. I don't think that we are being leaders. So, and that's just what I'm going to say about I have other comments about the plan in general. But, so I'm comfortable with, and I would support the motion if we can come back with something that says, look, we need a crossing. Greenwood is one of those that has been considered. Currently, it's not our first choice given neighborhood issues, but we're going to continue to look, but it may need to be considered in the future. I think that would be, I'd be fine with that if it comes back to us like that, but I'll support the motion.
Thanks, Andy. Further comments on the friendly amendment? Just a reminder, the amendment is to remove reference to Greenwood Drive, I believe encapsulating some of Andy's points for the final adoption. If this amendment passes, all those in favor of the friendly amendment, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion carries on a 5-1 vote with Councilor Davis voting in opposition, which brings us back to the original motion. Additional comments? Andy?
Yeah, I guess I have a couple. And again, I just kind of brought it up there. My overriding issue, I think, with the plan, and I understand because it is the most difficult thing we face in town, is getting east and west. And I think that's only going to get more difficult. And we have literally reference on, I'll go back through my notes here really quickly. I mean, we have reference on page 132 of the packet, page 15 of the plan, which is the reference to extend 7th to Spokane, and then again on page 192 of the packet, page 80, with a reference to east-west in one paragraph. And that's the only real reference we have to any east-west issues in town. And I think we had a lady here 2 weeks ago that kind of addressed that, lived out off of 7th, I believe, somewhere. So I do, but I understand that is kind of the elephant in the room, and it is something that's difficult for us to deal with. That said, I'm not going to oppose the thing because of that. I am going to address a couple of comments that were made a public comment. One of pursuing independent project that we had decided that we would expend city funds and resort tax dollars to do that. I don't recall any decision by this body to do that. I think because we're at a current impasse with the state does not mean that we're going to go out by ourselves and build Spokane Avenue and a new bridge and all the rest of that stuff. Just because we're in an impasse with the state does not mean that we're going to fund it. All it means is that we haven't agreed on how it's going to work, and ultimately that's a state highway and they're going to pay for it. And one of the issues that I think people forget, and it's one of the problems that the Department of Transportation always has, and we fought this since the 80s probably, is it shouldn't be a top-down process. It should be a bottom-up process. And Highway 93 is an extremely good example, and I served on the EIS committee in 1991, so I know this road better than probably anybody in this room. And what I can tell you, we were going to get a 5-lane from Summers all the way through Whitefish. That was the plan that they came to town with. That's not ultimately what we built, because we as communities, and that was all the communities in this valley, got together and said, no, that's not going to work. And what we're seeing now, and Rhonda, you made a comment about it just earlier, how, oh, they stop at this light and they stop at that light, and then they're going to have to go through a roundabout. That's going to be a mess. That was our point in 1991 when we said, you build a 5-lane from Summers all the way through Whitefish with unlimited access, it's going to be nothing but stoplights. And that's what we would have ended up with, and we're almost getting there anyway. So I think that we really need to understand that, and I'm perfectly comfortable with what we said when we think option G is a better thing for us. That said, it doesn't mean that we won't come to some kind of other modified agreement with the state, and I think Craig's approach is spot on, that we address those things that we have commonality with, and we work through those, and we get those projects done, and then we move forward. But ultimately, we need something that works for this community and that what we want. And I understand people saying, and one of the issues everybody says about, oh, well, it's just, we need to just have it go up. You know, it all turns into 2-lane when it makes a left on 2nd anyway. So whether we stop that at 7th or not, it's always going to be 2-lane through town. That's not going to change. So the state's contention is that we peel enough traffic off at 7th that people aren't going to go all the way through. But you know, a lot of that traffic goes through town. We all watch Spokane. You sit there in the line of cars, and you don't see a lot of them turn. You see them all the way go up to the Firebrand and make a left-hand turn and go to the parking garage, go to the golf cart, wherever they go. So anyway, I'm just super not comfortable with sitting and saying, oh, the state knows what's best for us. The state doesn't know what's best for us. We know what's best for us. And I think that's part of the problem. So other than that, that's the only other thing. I think I had a couple other things I wanted to address here. Do want to address Whitefish Avenue because that was brought up by Andrew. Great name. Thank you. Whitefish Avenue extension has been on the maps for a very, very, very long time. We need that street to go through, and we need Baker to go through. We're sitting here talking about, Rhonda's telling us how non-functional Highway 93 is. That's because we don't have any alternative routes east or west of that. We don't have any other roads that we can put people on. I mean, as much as we all hate it, and, you know, I'm like Mark. I grew up here. I've been here forever. Literally sat up here forever. And I don't like some of the things that happen, but we have to plan for them, and they're going to happen. We can't put a gate up, and we can't stop people coming. And if we don't plan, that's when we have problems, and that's what we're trying to do here. And I think we had a pretty robust public process to come up with this plan. And not everybody's going to be happy with it. That's everything we do. That's just the way it works. So anyway, I've spoken far longer than I should have, but anyway, there you go.
Thanks, Andy. Further comments on the motion? Ben.
As a lone dissenting vote to the Greenwood Bridge removal, I did just want to make a quick comment about that. I very much understand the concerns of the neighbors there, and I know that I would not love having a bridge in front of my house as well. The problem I have with it is, you know, as we've heard up here, and I do think it's true that you are going to see more development out in this part of town on the east side of the river at some point. I know right now the situation is that all of that traffic funnels down through Park Avenue, curves around by Cow Creek, and that situation is very unsustainable. It is bad as it is today, and it's going to get worse. And so I do think, keeping a long-term vision, I think we need to have east-west connectivity. That's an important priority. And I am very sensitive to the fact that, yeah, finding the right spot to build a bridge is very hard. But if we're going to remove it, I think we need to understand what the alternatives are, because I think there's a lot of thought that's gone into this about how we would address the problem of traffic going across the river as it's presented. So I think if the council is going to remove that, I think I'm certainly open to any good ideas, but it'd be nice to hear some good ideas to reincorporate those changes back into this plan. That's my opinion.
Thanks, Ben. Frank.
And I think Andy's colloquy earlier about what we should be considering or how the plan should be laying this out would be, we need to focus on kind of east-west connectivity between 13th and JP. And it can be that simple, and that is what our real intent here is, and we need to find the best spot for it. And I think that is what we're going to get back, or I think that's what my sense was from Craig as we go forward with this.
Giuseppe.
A couple of questions, given the changes that we're discussing. Are we suggesting that Public Works reworks this plan and then it gets submitted to us again? Or are we suggesting that we vote now and then in consent agenda, we look at what it looks like, and if it doesn't work, we pull it out? It's just a point of order because I'm not familiar.
The latter is correct.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions for Craig. Craig, if we take the bridge out and you try to find alternate options for viability east to west, will the bill change?
Will the
Bill.
the financial summary
Yes, yeah.
change?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe we forecasted costs for bridges just because they're so variable. I don't anticipate that it will.
So when we say that the cost for the city is $93 million, that would not have included the bridge.
No, the cost to MDT was $93 million.
And funding needs city,
Oh, I'm sorry, that was the
Yeah.
total unfunded.
Yeah, sorry, not unfunded. I said the total cost would be $93 million, of which we expect to collect $56 million in the next 20 years. So the unfunded costs are still $36 million. My question is, was that bridge in your,
I don't believe so. Let me look. I don't think we were able to come to a confident estimate on bridge construction, and so I don't believe. We do have a cost for Spokane Avenue from 13th to 2nd, which I believe has a bridge, and that was based on an MDT estimate, but I'm not sure that we estimated the cost for Greenwood. We did? Yep, okay. Yeah, so we had $6.1 million for the Greenwood Bridge. If we take that out of the plan, then yes, the financial summary will change.
Okay.
Thanks, Karin.
Mr. Mayor, I'm done with my question. Can I comment to the motion now?
Yes, you may.
Okay, I will repeat myself from what I said last time. Approving a plan that already starts with $36 million in the red without doing more work and figuring out how to do it. We got 20 years plan, and unless there are deadlines to respect right now, I cannot vote in favor of a plan knowing that we're already starting in the red. I cannot tell my kids I've done this, and I cannot tell my staff in my business I've done this. I think I cannot just vote for this plan.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Further comments on the motion? Frank?
With all respect, Councilor Caltabiano, this council is not approving a deficit spending routine. What we're recognizing through this plan and through this planning process is what are currently unfunded. I'm not sure that I have ever seen a project come through this council where we did not seek additional funding to cover those unfunded costs, nor have we approved such projects. I think the plan is not approving a deficit spending, it's recognizing what we know is currently unfunded and that we will have to seek additional funds to get them approved. So just to be clear here, all this plan does is recognize what we currently do not have funding, state or federal funding for. It doesn't mean we won't get it, and it doesn't mean we won't look for it, and it doesn't mean we're going to proceed with these things without gaining that opportunity. So just to be clear. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank. Further comments? Rebecca, and then Andy, did you have a comment? Okay, Rebecca.
Just to Giuseppe's point, this is just a really big plan, and we have to have these plans in place because when people come to us with projects, we need to know where we need to designate these routes. And so that's how these transportation plans work. We don't always know what's going to happen in the future. Like, we didn't even have paint to stripe the streets for a while, you know. Things can change a lot. But if we have a plan, we at least say, okay, we do want to grow this street and create connectivity. So I am comfortable with just passing the plan, even though we don't know exactly where the money's going to come from in the future, because if we have the opportunity to make these streets and improve the connectivity and safety of our town, then it's our responsibility to do that. So, thank you. Okay.
And I think a good example, to your point, Rebecca, is in 2006 when the city adopted the Downtown Business District Master Plan. The only reason the city received $3 million in a Tiger grant for the reconstruction of the downtown was for the mere fact that we had done our planning well in advance of the opportunity that arose for federal funding to fund that project in its entirety. Steve, I saw your name, and then we'll go back to Andy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is also part of the growth policy, and we don't put costs in the growth policy. I'm a little confused as to why we even put costs in here, other than it gives us a ballpark of what it's going to cost. And we know that any project, like Frank said, is a mixture of city dollars, federal dollars, state dollars, grant dollars, all kinds of different opportunities for funding things. We are not approving anything to be built at this point, which is also goes to the point of the Greenwood Bridge. And the other part is that this is our vision. It's not a, you know, this is the vision of what we need in order to make our city function better in the future. And whatever that cost is, we'll figure out a way to pay for it. And so we're not adopting a deficit because it costs, because we don't have funding for $36 million. And by the time we get to some of these projects, the costs are going to be vastly different than what they've been estimated at already anyway. So again, I'm a little confused, and I asked Craig this in an email, is why we even put these numbers in a plan like this, because all it does is cause confusion, I think. So again, this is our vision for what we want the city to look like. We have some issues that we're going to have to iron out with east-west connectivity, but we need to enact our vision so that in the future, if we have an opportunity to apply for a grant, like we did with the Downtown Master Plan, we have the planning that says, yeah, this has been our plan, and we adopted it in 2022, and we can work off of that plan.
Thank you, Steve. Andy, anything additional to add?
Yeah, just one other thing. I was just going to make a comment to Giuseppe's comment there. And I mean, I think a very good example would be our sewer treatment facility, our wastewater treatment facility. When we were told that we had to go to a total maximum daily limit on what we could discharge into the river, we had to begin planning that facility, or we were going to lose our discharge permit. Did we have the funding when we began planning that? Absolutely not. Did we have the funding when we awarded the bid to build that project? Yes, we did. Awarding a contract to someone, putting it out to bid without funding in place, you're correct. That's deficit spending. Planning is not. Businesses do it. It's even longer process in the public sector than it is in the private sector. Had we not done that, had we not started planning, even though we didn't know that we had the funding in place, we would have lost our permit and people would have had to quit flushing their toilets, and they'd have been bringing those buckets right in here. And I've seen people do it, actually. I have to say that. I've seen poop come in here. A city employee actually brought a bucket in one time. But, so that's the difference. We're not adopting a deficit here. What we're doing is we're adopting a plan. And I think unfunded is probably the wrong word to use here, is it's funding not yet identified. I think would probably be a little bit more appropriate to what we would be doing here. So that's it. That's all I have to say.
I'm not rebutting to any of that. I just wanted to add that I went back and studied the data we had on the traffic, and for the record, 20 years from now, this concept G is forecast to create more traffic problems than concept G. I had asked for a little time to have a conversation with Mr. Boson. You mentioned that name, I called them, we had a conversation informally. And on top of the funding, I'm not comfortable with the forward-looking expertise of that overwhelming majority that came to O'Shaughnessy about seeing 20 years from now the traffic going from 2 lanes northbound into 1 lane, even turning into 7th. And also for that reason, I don't want my name on the record of disapproval.
Further comments? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion carries on a 5-to-1 vote with Councilor Caltabiano voting in opposition. Thanks, everyone, for joining the last few meetings. Appreciate your comments. We will move on to item 6B of our agenda, which is consideration of a request from Brett Rathel for a conditional use permit to construct a guest house located at 430 Parkway Drive, and the property is zoned WR1, which is our one-family residential district. Nelson.
Okay. So, like you said, Brett Rathall is requesting a conditional use permit to construct a guest house at 430 Parkway Drive. I'm just, again, developed with a single-family home, zone WR1, and the growth policy designation is urban. Staff recommended approval of the conditional use permit application subject to 8 conditions set forth in detached staff report. The planning board, the Whitefish Planning Board met on September 15th, 2022 and considered the request. Following the hearing, the planning board unanimously approved the request. In making their decision, they adopted staff report WCUP 22-23 with findings of fact and recommended conditions of approval, as well as an additional 8th condition of approval to meet the 24-foot height requirement for accessory buildings that will be confirmed at the time of building permit. The property is 32,365 square feet, and again is located on the 430 Parkway Drive, which is a private road that comes off of Wisconsin. The adjacent land uses are all residential. And again, the land use designation is urban. All the utilities are provided by the city. A notice was mailed to the adjacent landowners within 300 feet of the subject parcel on August 25th, 2022, and a sign was posted on the property. As of this report, I received 1 public comment in opposition of the conditional use permit. Again, the proposed use complies with the growth policy designation of urban. It's finding 1. As far as the setbacks, parking, lot coverage, and guest house standards, everything is good. As far as the height, it has been a new condition 8 has been added to address the height, because the accessory building height limit is 24 feet, and the plans did not meet that, but the applicant is going to fix that, and it will be, again, confirmed at the time of building permit. The site is suitable for the proposed use because there's adequate land area to meet all standards. The existing access is adequate, and there are no environmental hazards present on the subject property. For quality and functionality, the site plan has effectively dealt with the design issues because it meets the required parking, the traffic circulation will not be impacted, and any new utilities will be placed underground. For as far as availability and adequacy of public services and facilities, everything, it's adequate. The municipal services are already on site. Response times to police and fire are not anticipated to be affected, and they have adequate access. As far as the neighborhood community impact, there are really no anticipated to have a negative impact as far as noise, dust, smoke, odor, or other environmental nuisances, just with the use of a guest house. For neighborhood community compatibility, it's compatible with the existing use in the neighborhood as residential, and it fits with all the designs, size, and density of the immediate area. So it is recommended that the conditional use permit be approved, subject to following conditions. I'll read them now. The Project must comply with a site plan submitted on July 28, 2022, except as amended by these conditions. Minor deviations from the plans must require review pursuant to Section 11-7E8, Whitefish City Code. Major deviations from the plan must require review as well. Off-street parking space must be designated for the guest house, and 2 off-street parking spaces must be designated for the primary residence. All areas disturbed because of road and utility construction must be reseeded as soon as practical to inhibit erosion and spread of noxious weeds. All noxious weeds as described by Whitefish City Code must be removed throughout the life of the development by the recorded property owner. All on-site lighting must be dark sky compliant. Prior to submitting a building permit, the property owner must provide the city a recorded copy of either a deed restriction or restrictive covenant that the guest house may not be used for rental purposes as a permanent residence for anyone employed in a home occupation on the subject property or as a short-term rental. The conditional use permit is valid for 18 months and shall terminate unless commencement of the authorized activity is begun. And the private gravel road that is used to access the property should be repaired of any damage and returned to the pre-construction state after construction is concluded. Before construction begins, the road must be treated to mitigate dust. And then the 8th condition is the guest house height shall not exceed 24 feet in height. This will be confirmed at the time of building permit.
Thanks, Nelson. Any questions for Nelson on his staff report? Rebecca.
Thanks, Nelson. So there, I'm just going through the neighbor that had some concerns. It is not allowed to be a short-term rental because it's a guest house, so it can only be guests.
Correct.
Okay, she's worried that that lot will be subdivided and this will become a second home. Is that a possibility?
No, it is not with that restricted.
Okay.
When you sign on the guest house, you can't divide the
Okay.
2 properties.
And then the CUP goes with the property.
Correct.
Right. And then she wants to know about the trees. And it's vague. As many trees and native vegetation as possible. Is a defined tree plan not required with the CUP, is it?
It would not be required on single-family developments such like a guest house. There's no designated plan required.
Okay, and then do you happen to know the rear height of the building from the ground? Is that where the 24-foot would be?
Yes, so it's going to be, the way our requirements are, it's going to be 24 feet from natural grade all the way. So that's something that they are going to have to amend.
Okay.
And that will be checked before building permit.
Okay, and I might add a couple conditions. It just seems like she's concerned about the use of her property being impacted by the build-out in this location. So she doesn't look like she's here, though, so, all right. Thank you.
Further questions for Nelson? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 6B of our agenda, and we'll hold that public hearing now. Any public comment this evening? Michelle, how about online?
No, not now.
We go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Giuseppe.
I move to approve WCUP 22-23 and the findings of fact in the staff report and the 8 conditions of approval as recommended by the Whitefish Planning Board on September 15, 2022.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Giuseppe, would you like to speak to your motion at all? Okay. Rebecca.
I'd like to add 2 conditions. One would be windows on sides facing adjacent neighbors will protect neighbors' privacy, because from the design.
Let's see if we get a second
Oh, yeah.
before we discuss the merits of the amendment. Is there a second to the added condition?
No? Okay.
That motion fails, Rebecca.
How about hot tubs will be shielded for privacy from neighbors?
Is there a second to the friendly added condition of approval?
Okay.
Not seeing any, that also dies for lack of a second. Good try, though. Yeah. Absolutely. Further discussion? All those in favor? Steve, I'm sorry.
I just have one thing. I did, at the planning board meeting, Eric Mulcahy was here, and he was the one who actually brought the building height to the attention of staff when he was looking over his plans, and I'm sure that he will take care of it and get that amended. So So I know it's a condition of approval, but just, we usually don't have that as a condition of approval.
And just to that point, Dave or Nelson, the building height, any building height is measured. If you have a natural ground that's sloping, it's measured, it can be measured from the highest topographic point.
Yeah, it's
where
from whatever the adjacent point
foundation
is of the
intercepts
natural
ground.
grade to the highest
So
point
it's
of the
not
building.
the low point, it's not the average, it can
It's
be
everywhere around the building, yeah.
including the highest point in elevation. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Nelson. We'll move on to item 6C, Resolution 22-31, a resolution amending the Legacy Homes Program purchase prices, rental prices, and fees in lieu. Wendy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So since 2019, the council has annually updated the fee in lieu and the purchase price and rental price for the now voluntary Legacy Home Program. This is an amendment to our administrative procedures. The ownership prices and rental are derived from the area median income for Flathead County as established annually by the federal government through HUD. And then the fee in lieu is based on a 3-year average of sales in the most multiple listing services for the 59937 zip code and the average square footage of homes sold in the 59937, along with the AMI for Flathead County. This information is obtained from the Northwest Montana Association of Realtors. And that 3-year average also throws out the outliers of 5 million or more. So below on, let's see, page 348 and 349 of your packet, you'll see the change in price for home prices based on area median income as well as rental distribution prices, and then also for 0-bedroom up through 3-bedroom. Those went up about 9% from previous years, and then the fee in lieu went up to $182,274 per unit, which is up from $118,547 in 2021. And this is something that you guys just do annually, and we ask for your recommendation or approval.
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her staff report or the price schedule? Rebecca.
Wendy, would you be willing to add in an hourly rate that goes along with these AMIs in an annual salary based on one person? Like, for instance, 60% of AMI is $19.49 per hour or $40,530 per year.
But it's the household income.
I know.
It
But
could be one worker, it could be 2 workers.
But it could be the combined I know, but I just am trying to make it more user-friendly for people.
I think the thing that we really talked about when we decided to use the AMI from HUD is because it's an industry standard, and this is how they do it, and it's a defensible industry standard, so that's where.
No, I mean, not get rid of your tables, but just add more clarification with an hour. It would mean if you make 60% of the AMI, the combined family income would be $19.49 an hour, and the family would make $40,530 per year.
So I'd leave that up to the council. You tell me.
I
think
okay.
it's kind of confusing.
I think it is
There's
too.
multiple
All
workers or
right.
one worker or a family of 4 with, one mom with 3 kids.
Right.
Or
I just
2 parents and
Yeah,
2
I just
kids.
keep thinking that when we use all the jargon for housing, it kind of loses people. So this is administrative, though. is
These
what
are
you're saying.
administrative procedures, correct.
Thanks, Rebecca. Any other questions for Wendy? Not seeing any. Thanks, Wendy. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be Resolution 22-31. Excuse me. Are there any public comments this evening? Nathan.
It's been a long time since I've been up here. Nathan Dugan, 937 Kalispell Avenue, speaking on behalf of, or on my capacity as president of Shelter WF. Tonight, want to talk specifically about the fee in lieu portion of the Legacy Homes program as proposed in the staff report. I want to preface what I'm about to say by acknowledging that the Legacy Homes program itself may need to be reworked to see any benefit here. But I do appreciate that the fee is proposed to be increased, but I think that we can do a little bit better. We have 2 options here. in my mind. Increase the fee even more, or just get rid of it entirely, and you'll understand that hopefully by the end. Probably doesn't make sense right now, but given the data that we have from past experience, the Legacy Homes program seems to be better at producing rental homes, actual and those denied by this body in recent months, than it is at producing ownership homes. I believe that the fee in lieu is directly responsible for this. As it stands, the fee in lieu is significantly lower than the cost of construction, and the gap between the affordable and market rate housing economies is too large. It is not difficult for me to imagine that building an affordable home would cost a developer money while paying the fee in lieu as currently structured, particularly when it was $118,000, and selling the home instead at a market rate might actually generate money for the developer. We should be getting one-to-one trade on fee in lieu funds. If a home's not produced by a developer who opts to pay the fee, then a nonprofit should be able to directly use those funds to construct a comparable home immediately, not have to get 3 or 4 fees in lieu to be able to make one house. My favorite method for calculating a fee in lieu is called the affordability gap method. This method calculates the fee in lieu as the difference between the fair market price and what a lower moderate income household can afford. We have the numbers right in front of us tonight. The maximum affordable purchase rate on the sheet in front of you is $328,000. This is substantially less than the market value of the same house, which in Whitefish in 2022 would easily be $700,000, if not more. Using this method, the fee in lieu would be nearly $400,000. It's the gap between those two numbers, enough to provide an actual home for someone. The flip side of this is that it's a huge disincentive for a developer to pay the fee in lieu. They might as well build an affordable home on site instead, which I think is what we want them to do, ideally. I understand that you may be hesitant to raise the fee in lieu this much, so here's a second option: eliminate the fee in lieu altogether. If a developer wants to obtain the benefits of the Legacy Homes program, then they have to build a mixed income community that's accessible to all. They can't simply buy their way out of this obligation. Allow me to circle back to where I started. None of this will work without reworking the Legacy Homes program and seriously improving its incentives. What might work aside from increasing the incentives that are currently available? I think holding up to our end of the bargain to actually see affordable housing built by allowing developers who check the boxes of the Legacy Homes program that we build ourselves, by either building affordable housing on site or paying a fee that will directly cover the construction of a new affordable home to be built by right. I'll leave it to all of you to figure out the specifics of a Legacy Homes program that might work like that, but thank you for the consideration of these ideas, and I hope that we can create a Legacy Homes program that's a little bit more effective at building affordable homes, and particularly ownership homes. Thanks.
Thanks, Nathan. Yep. Further public comment? How about online, Michelle? Not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Steve.
Move that we adopt Resolution 22-31, a resolution amending the Legacy Homes program purchase prices, rental prices, and fees in lieu.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Davis.
I do have a question. Yeah, now I do have a question for Wendy. Sorry, Wendy. I understand that does HUD provide a fee in lieu calculation? So how do we calculate fee in lieu?
I think I'll actually let Ben describe it. It was more his spreadsheet. It's his spreadsheet that we use.
I'm happy to help offer a comment on this, and also in response to Nathan. The methodology is actually very similar to what Nathan's describing. It's the difference between what the market cost of a home is versus the cost or the price of the affordable home. Now, there's a lot of assumptions and calculations and things that go into that, and I think that those can vary over time, or there's different opinions on what those are. But, what's happened here, I did take a look at the spreadsheet that Wendy sent me, and simply the prices of real estate have gone up so much on a percentage basis that the price of the fee in lieu is also going up quite a lot on a percentage basis. I'm going to say all that, and then I'm also going to say that the Legacy Homes program is not designed to produce fee and lieu's. It actually specifically says in that program that we do not want fee and lieu's. And so it would be a very rare circumstance indeed to ever see a fee in lieu, in my opinion. I know as a council member up here, I would scrutinize that pretty closely. We're here to build houses, not take fees. So I would say that it's probably never going to get
Steve?
I would also like to make a friendly amendment to my motion if I'm allowed to do that. Not sure of the parliamentary procedure, but I would just eliminate the fee in lieu from this, from the Legacy Homes program purchase price.
Is there a second
Report.
to that friendly amendment? And that motion does fail for lack of a second, which brings us back to our original motion for approval. Further comments? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Wendy. We will move on to item 7A. You have Dana's written report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for our city manager? I just wanted to acknowledge Maria and your staff for bringing home all the grants for the Armory Park redevelopment project, and it's pretty exciting to see all the activity out there. It seems like they've really made a lot of progress in the last several weeks, so good job to you and your department. Thanks very much. Dana, anything else to report on?
Nothing this evening.
Great, thanks, Dana. We will start with communications from the mayor and city councilors. We're going to go random tonight, so we're going to start with Ben, since you weren't here at the last meeting.
I don't have any comments, thank you.
Andy.
Just kind of on a humorous note, I was thinking if we're going to support legislation and we get another spear hunting bill this year, that we should probably support that, because then we can address everyone's concern with deer culling. So, because it'd be a really safe way to kill deer in town if we had to do it that way. So that was the only thing, I was going back to that first thing, so anyway.
Steve, any comments tonight?
Yes, I do have a comment, and this is based on something that I noticed in Dana's staff report. I would like us to consider a resolution. It's too late for this year, but I'd like us to consider changing our city, just amending what we celebrate and why we have the second Monday in October off, to include Indigenous Peoples Day. I wouldn't take out Columbus Day, but I would say that we should include Columbus and Indigenous Peoples Day as the reason for having that day off. And I talked to Dana briefly about it. Can't get it done, we can't get the resolution passed in time for this year, but by next year. But sometime we'll consider it and it'll be in place for next year. So I think that's important that we recognize that. And the other thing I just want to say, there is a big swim meet in town this weekend, so if anybody is looking for a volunteer opportunity, come on down to the Wave at about 7:30 on Saturday or Sunday, and I'll put you to work.
Thanks, Steve. Good luck with the event. Frank?
My only comment, speaking into it.
Turn it up, Jake.
All right, that's the best I can do. Anyway, Nathan, thanks for bringing that. Because we didn't act on it tonight, that we're not interested, and this goes for the public as well. If there's anything you can think of that would help us improve our affordable housing program, we're all ears. We've been hamstrung, as you know, by our state legislatures, but I think it's important that we continue to think about this problem and continue to work on it. So don't think those requests and those ideas are going to go on deaf ears. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank. Giuseppe? Thank you. And Rebecca?
I have some questions. For Craig, first is Edgewood. I drove by there and walked the neighborhood, and I was pretty upset, so I called Karen, and she explained that it was seeded in July. Now we have thistles everywhere, and it's full of noxious weeds. And so the person that was hired to do that subcontracting is going to come back through and either mow it or treat it. And then, but it doesn't sound like any of that's going to be replanted, or any of the vegetation's going to be available to those people. Sorry, Ben. Until next spring. Is that what you're thinking now? I just was shocked that we hadn't, mostly I realized after I went on a rant was my neighborhood is full of noxious weeds after a resort tax project, and it's been 12 years, and they're still there. And so when I saw this neighborhood have the same problem where we hired someone to seed it, and they seeded with contaminated soil, and now it's no grass but just weeds, I feel like it's substandard from what we should be providing the residents. So I just wanted you to give an update on that, so publicly the neighborhood knows what to expect, please.
Yeah, and honestly, Rebecca, it's the same update that I gave at the last meeting. We're not done. We had a contractor on Edgewood that we accepted a low bid, as we're required to do unless we can disqualify a contractor, and we struggled throughout the entire project with that contractor. We worked them through the project. All of the work that's been done in terms of the storm sewer, the roadway, the water services, the curb, the gutter, the street lights, the sidewalk, has all been built to specification, and it took a tremendous amount of effort on the part of our engineer and city staff to get that done. The final element of this project, as with any project, is the restoration, and it's always the part of the project that gets the most scrutiny. Unfortunately, on this project, we weren't able to seed it until the middle of July this year, which is literally the worst time to seed anywhere, but especially in Montana, the beginning of the dry season. But had we not seeded it, the weed situation, I can tell you right now, would be worse. So we have a warranty, we have a bond, we have $12,000 of retainage that we're holding on the project, and I can assure you we're going to get the turf right. In addition to that, there is individual landscape plans that we've worked with property owners on, Ben and his family being one of them, and those will be bid, those will be installed. At this point, based on the progress of the Texas Avenue project, we want to try and bundle all of those trees and all that landscaping into one, so it will likely be next spring. I'm pushing the bid so that we can hopefully get the Edgewood portion completed this fall, but I can't guarantee it. All I ask is that people wait to cast judgment on the project until I say we're done, and we're definitely not done.
Okay, and then there was a permanent fence taken down and a temporary fence put up, and I was wondering, is that in the works before winter comes to replace that fence?
Yep, we're working with that property owner on
Okay.
the fence replacement.
Yeah, just I think for the winter it wouldn't hold up too well. So thank you for explaining all that, and I'm sorry it was a difficult project for the staff as well. And then for Bridger, I have a question on the drug-free zone signs that we have around town. Do we not have drug-free zones anymore? Like, should we take them down? Like, I wasn't sure who put them up and what the purpose was, but I felt like it was probably a school zone issue.
I would say all of Whitefish is a drug-free zone. I believe those were put there from safe routes to schools and to just identify that you're being in an area. I don't think there's any law that assists with those signs, or I think the sign is just to be there to say, hey, we're within schools, those type of things, please don't use drugs. But as far as the use of drugs, I'd say all Whitefish should be a drug-free zone. I know those signs are getting old. They were put up, I think, when I was going to middle school, elementary school, and they're a little faded as well. But you usually find them within the school district area. I think the ones that you probably are seeing are along Baker Avenue.
Well,
that's for the parks.
Two different residents brought it up as a conundrum. We were approving a marijuana dispensary right across the
Right.
street from one, and so I thought maybe we should take that one down, since a lot of towns, once their downtown starts to expand, they have to change the use and patterning. So I just...
And I think Karn might have some knowledge of when those were put up and the reason for it.
Yeah, just if you guys wouldn't mind thinking about
I'll
that
chat with
one in
him.
particular, just so it's not awkward. And then I wanted to say, Maria, thanks again for doing such a great job getting funding for our expansion. It's pretty exciting, more than $500,000 from a grant. And then the bear-proof containers on my street, which is by the river, are working really well. But they're pushing them over to Steve's Street. And there's a bear fair this Saturday at Depot Park from 10 to 12. However, I did have a discussion with Justine, our bear management specialist, and they're really thinking about euthanizing bears now because they're coming out during the day and they're approaching within 10 feet of people, and some of that is on the routes home from school for children. And so even when they try to relocate them, they are problem bears and they go right back to the garbage. So whatever people can do to really be strict about this now, it is a 2 to 3 year change to let the bears acclimate back to finding natural food, and they might be more dangerous too. So I hope we don't have to euthanize them, but that's kind of what they're talking about because we might have already ruined some of them. Otherwise, thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Rebecca. I had a quick follow-up, Angie, from Toby Scott's comment at the beginning of the meeting regarding rental scooters. We did address that legislatively, correct? We did. Okay. So we're covered. Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure we took care of that. Michelle, I just wanted to thank you for dinner tonight and every night. I was on a bike ride. I'm like, I'm starving. I hope there's food when we get there. And sure enough, it was a home-cooked meal, so even better. But thanks for taking such good care of us. And I just wanted to thank staff and this entire council for all the hard work that we do up here. It's certainly appreciated and doesn't go unrecognized by those in town. On that note, we are adjourned. Thanks. Are you? Congrats.